welcome to the Evolving Potential podcast. I'm excited to have with me today Charlie Smith. We were fortunate enough to have met during my many searches of other mental performance coaches that are doing anything near what I'd like to be doing in the future. So Charlie Smith is an entrepreneur. He's a real estate investor who's done over $1 billion in deals. He currently hosts his own podcast called Overcome Outloud. He's a mental performance coach. He's a keynote speaker, course creator. I'm working with corporations as well as athletes. And I'm going to kind of let Charlie talk about anything that I might have missed in the bio. I know he's doing a lot, very similar to what I want to be doing. Very diverse skills, able to be used. Welcome, Charlie.
Todd, it's so great to be here with you, and I've so enjoyed our journey together and your journey, and watching you kind of step into your power and just to be a part of it. It's been amazing, and you pretty much summed it up. I mean, I've done a lot in my career, but my focus right now is to empower and to educate and inspire others to own the pen to the story of their own lives, become the intentional author of that life, and develop the mental performance skills that they need, the routines and habits, and all of the mental performance skills that they need to become the intentional authors of their lives and write a great story for themselves. I say I work with the motivated, not the mandated. You know, I work with people that really understand that principle that one of my early mentors, Trevor Moad, hung his hat on, which was you don't have to be sick to get better, and that performance is, there's no end to Excellence Mountain, and we just keep climbing. So giving people the tools and the resources. I think what I pride myself most on is taking evidence-based strategies and turning them into actionable steps that people can actually take. And making this stuff really relatable and usable.
That's perfect. And I needed to hear that too, because that can be a very challenging thing, is to explain what mental performance is in the first place, to get the buy-in for it. It is a new field. And so that's why I kind of wanted you to describe what you do in your own words, because I know that can be a challenge if you're out there having a conversation out in the real world and someone's like, hey, what do you do? You're like, oh God, here we go. You seem to have that elevator pitch down pretty well. So how has it been for you being in a new market where you do kind of have to sell what it is that you do, as well as the services themselves?
So I've been in business for about 30 plus years. You know, I started in commercial real estate, and the profession that I ended up with for the last 20 years was commercial real estate development. So I would build shopping centers from the ground up. So I look at how I can apply what I learned in that phase to this phase. And really, it's about having a vision of what I want. And then how am I adding value to communities and tenants that want to be in that area? What do they need on that piece of land that I'm going to develop? I could build anything, but if I don't build what people need, then they're not going to lease it out for me, and no one's going to finance it, and no one's going to buy it when I'm done with it. And so for me, mental performance is the same thing. I mean, you go to anybody that's a high performer and you ask them when they're at their best, what's it like, and what do they need? What are the tools that they're seeking in their performance? And you hear, whether it's a sales team, a leadership team, a sports team, you'll hear things like confidence. We want to be able to overcome adversity. We want resilience. We want to be able to be more disciplined. We want to have better motivation and commitment. And then you ask, yeah, those are all really important. What are you doing to train those? And I've worked with high-level leadership teams, Fortune 300 companies, and major league professional sports teams. And the truth is, when you get down to game planning, X's and O's, film watching, preparing for the competition, identifying the sales strategy and the sales tactics and the obstacles, there hasn't been a lot of time for other people to actually train those things that they want. So you want confidence, and you want adversity tolerance, and you want motivation and commitment, and you want discipline and focus. What do you do to train them? And the answer then is usually, well, nothing. We just hope our people have that. And then I'm able to say, well, that's what I do. That's what I can do for you. So if you want these things and you don't have a way to build them in your team or your organization, I have a way to do that that'll get results. And that's kind of like anything. It's like it's not really selling. It's really helping people understand that there's something that they can go to when they need it the most that they currently don't have. And that's been kind of the same strategy and tactics that I've used to apply what I'm doing now, which is kind of that servant leadership. I had an early kind of mantra when I started, which was go where you're needed until you're needed where you go. It's like, you know, I see the need, nice. I'm gonna match the need, and then ultimately people are going to see that this can really help them, you know, excel.
So yeah, and that's why that's so important to me, is for people to understand. And that's, to me, like, yeah, selling the need is to get these coaches to understand how important these things are, to get the coaches to understand that there are things that we can do to improve them, and then to even potentially convince people to let us take it off of their shoulders. Because I think that's a big thing. I actually had a guest when I was bartending one time that was the quarterback coach for the Arizona Cardinals, and he was talking to me about how difficult it is for him to try to fit any of that into his curriculum. He's like, I know it's important. I know I need to talk to my guys about this, but I have to do my lesson planning for the technical stuff, the physical stuff, and then I got to figure out how to plan for any of that mental stuff, and that's not really my field. And so I would love for people to get more comfortable bringing someone like us in to speak. Even I love that you do the public speaking. That's something that I would like to do more of, as opposed to the one-on-one coaching. Feels like more like my vibe, but we'll see what happens as time goes on. But so I am curious, like, I know that you're getting invited to speak at these places, yes? And so when you're getting invited to speak there, what would you say that your call to action is? Because you're not able to necessarily go through the physical practices with these people. It's more conceptual. And so what is the call to action when you're going out to these facilities and getting invited out to do a mental performance speech?
Yeah, so I mean, the call to action is how you work with me, right? And so it's my kind of the irresistible offer. And really, what I've done is I've taken my training and I've created this Master Your Mental Performance. This happens to be for a professional rugby team that I just went down with. And so when I speak, the call to action is to get some workshops done where I take these workbooks and I come in and we'll do an hour or 45 minutes. Like I had when I went down to work with Nola Gold in New Orleans recently, I had 45 minutes on Monday, 45 minutes on Tuesday as part of their regular practice planning, before they went out and hit the weights and hit the field and hit the pitch, rather, to be able to install a mental performance skill. So they got 45 minutes with me in a classroom setting with a workbook, asking questions, kind of taking the thoughts from the clouds, putting it on the ground, creating confidence conditioning statements, creating a reset strategy when adversity hits. So 2 45-minute sessions, they ended up keeping me for the week. I ended up doing a third session on Friday. But that's the call to action, is to take this stuff from the clouds, put it on the ground, and go from a theoretical way to mastery, which is spaced repetition. And that's really what we need. It's just like you would never go into the strength and conditioning room one day for 40 minutes and listen to the guy and then think you're strong and conditioned. You have to go install that plan. So for me, I don't want to just create a state of mind and inspire and motivate. I want to create a trait in them and really get them to install these practices. And so getting into the curriculum setting and the classroom setting where they see it more than just a talk, more of a system.
I love that. And I do want to touch on that too. Your 5-step process. I'll let you talk about that in a second. I just think that is so key, is the transition from someone being like, oh, I'm super motivated. Let's say you go in there and you kill it with a motivational speech, even though we know that's not necessarily what it is. Some person's like, I am super motivated by that. And then they might feel like, well, it doesn't work. I've literally had people be like, oh, Tony Robbins, that stuff doesn't work. You listen to one of his speeches, you feel great, and then you go about doing the same stuff. Obviously, it shows a lack of understanding of the subconscious mind. But in reality, it's like there is a process there that needs to be completed to make sure that you're able to really focus on these things. And I wanted to let you talk about your 5-step process here. I'm sure you have it memorized, I feel like, but I've got it written down here if we need to touch on that. Would you be willing to go over that 5-step process?
Yeah, so I have two frameworks that I teach. One is my mental performance framework. I have 8 elements of optimal performance, which I teach, and then I have my personal development program, which is, as you know, my life, my pen. And so my mental performance framework, I have 6 elements of mental performance and 2 elements of organizational performance that I teach. So I teach developing an elite mindset. I teach self-awareness. I teach unshakable self-confidence, routines and habits of excellence, mental imagery and mindfulness, and I teach resilience and courage state. And then in the organizational level, I teach leadership and the right culture. And really what all of those 8 elements of optimal performance kind of weave into is what I call the 5 pillars of owning the pen to the story of your life. And that's what you're talking about, which are what are those 5 pillars. And so for me, in sport and life and business, there's 5 things that we need to know if we want to become the intentional authors of our lives. We need to know who we are. We need to know where we're going. We need to know how we're going to go there. We need to know who we become on the way there, and we need to know who we're going to go with. So I weave those kind of 8 elements of optimal performance into those 5 pillars of the pen, and help people kind of gain an understanding of those 5 fundamental pillars to becoming the intentional author of their life. So knowing who you are starts with self-awareness, and it starts with creating your own internal ad campaign and understanding how to create unshakable self-confidence for yourself. And so that first pillar of the pen embodies so much of those mental performance skills. And then knowing where you're going, right? Having goals, and having telescope goals and microscope goals and process goals, not just outcome goals, super important, so that we have a roadmap for success. And to your point earlier, whether it's the Tony Robbins comment or otherwise, right? What people need to understand is their process is working perfectly for the results they're getting. So if they want different results, all they need to consider is, what's the change in the process that I'm currently embedded in that I need to change? And if I don't know what those are, who's somebody that can help me? I mean, every coach could say, hey, look, man, I just want you to play one play at a time. Or every sales manager could say, look, I just want you to go one phone call at a time. But how do you help people create that focus of awareness to say, the last call is over, the next one hasn't happened yet, I need to get myself into this play or this call? That's what we do. And so having that process is important, which comes with knowing how you're going to go, where it is you want to go. And that's why that third pillar is so important.
Will you pause real quick?
Yeah.
I want to touch on this, and I want to keep going through your pillars. So
Yeah,
sorry
sure.
to interrupt you. You said telescope goals and microscope goals and process goals, and I think that those are all incredibly valuable, something that people maybe don't understand. So would you be willing to talk about those real quick?
Yeah, for sure. So in mental performance training, one of the foundational elements that we have to help people understand is to develop a process over outcome mindset, right? When we attach ourselves to outcomes, results, those are usually out of our control, right? So we want to have goals, which is kind of like a telescope sees far away. This is what I want a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, right? And it's really important that we're goal serving. Our mind's a goal serving mechanism. And so all the research says people with goals, written down goals, that review their goals, are going to be much more apt to achieve those goals. So we need to have them, but they need to be focused on about 20% of the time. 80% of the time needs to be focused on the microscope goals, which are the process goals, the things that are in my control that I can do every day. You might want to bat 320, but what do you need to do every day in terms of your routines and habits and the process that you go through, whether it's shadow reps, in the cage, on the field, soft tops, whatever it is that you've got to do on a consistent basis, and have that deliberate practice that Anders Ericsson talks about, where you're really focused on getting better in a certain area consistently. And those are process goals. So process goals are the things that are in your control that you do on a consistent basis that are attached to you achieving your telescope goals. So outcome goals, results goals are important to have, but the emphasis, 80% for me in my teaching, is on the process goals. Having clearly defined process goals that you understand are going to help you do that.
See, I love that, and that's why I wanted to make sure we touched on that, because that's really important for me in terms of even just not even just success, but just staying motivated. And so I'll give my own little metaphor here, and this is something I thought about during a lot of endurance running. I'll be doing my endurance running, and if I'm just sitting there thinking about each step, each breath, at a certain point in time, it just gets exhausting. You're literally like, how much more do I have left? And so for me, it's nice to jump out and to zoom out and be like, okay, well, I only have, a mile left. And so it's really not a big deal. I'm going to be okay. I've only got 10 minutes left. I've only got 15 minutes left. And so that's like me looking at the larger scale. But then sometimes even that's like, oh my God, when you start getting tired, I've got 10 minutes left. Like, that's Jesus. Like, I don't know if I can do this. And so I go back to the process and focus on, okay, then don't focus on that right now. Just focus on each step, each breath, just keep going. And it's kind of like this ability to zoom in and zoom out at will, depending on what you really need to look at. And for me, that's kind of how I've thought about it. And so I love that you shared that version of it as well.
Yeah, you glance over there, remember where you're going for motivation and commitment, why you started on the journey, and then you focus on the process. And look, I want to talk about something that's really important for everybody to understand. And it's this saying that been really harping on recently for people to understand, which is here is on the way there. The step that you're taking now is on the way to finishing the ultra marathon. The course that you're writing now, the page of the course you're writing now is on the way to having your online course done. Here is on the way there. We need to apply grit, patience, passion, and perseverance with the process. Okay, Todd? Passion and perseverance with the process, and patience with the outcome. We get so focused and we want that to happen now, and we wonder why it's not happening now. And if I was better, it would happen now. But every great elite performer understands here's on the way there. It's the work today that I do that will create the outcome that I want in the future. And so I've got to attach that and apply that grit, that passion, that perseverance, persistence to the here, and patience with the there.
So yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's also even at a more simplistic level, just enjoying the process. Like I love that you're like, it's here. Yeah, this page I'm writing now is valuable. What I'm doing now is valuable, and it's going to get me to where I need to go. But I really need to stay focused on the now. And yeah, here's on the way there. That's a good feeling. Each step is important. Each thing I do is important. To really stay in that mindset, to really stay focused on that 80% being the microscope goals. I love that. So I'm more than happy for you to move on to number 3. I know how you will go there.
That is number 3. Process. That is the process over outcome, routines and habits. Those are the things that are going to help you get there. Once you've identified where it is you want to go, you come down now to routines and habits and the process of how you're going to go there. And I think the 4th pillar is probably, I never would say any of them are more important, but in terms of longevity, knowing who you become on the way to achieving a goal is super important. Your character, your principles, your values, the things that you are relating to the world about yourself, and how you identify your core values, how you define your core values, how you identify above and below the line behaviors for your core values and principles, so that every day you are becoming the best version of yourself. You can't transmit something you haven't got, right? And so, as an example, part of my story is alcoholism and addiction. And so while I achieved a lot in business, I did that on the heels of a double life and a very bad opiate and alcohol addiction. And so I wasn't really proud of who I became on the way to achieving that material success, because I really couldn't look myself in the mirror. And that's where I created that 4th pillar is, hey, yeah, it's nice we can all want to achieve that goal. We can all want to achieve that success, whether it be material, spiritual, physical, or emotional, but who are you going to become on the way there? What's the best version of yourself? And that's why those values and principles and that mission and that vision of kind of knowing who you're going to become on the way to achieving your goal has become really foundational for me.
Honestly, and that's a big part of why I'm studying sociology, my master's degree right now, because of the importance of values and principles at a larger scale that we really implement into society. And so I think that's huge, and something that I would love for you to talk about real quick is the above the line and below the line behavior. That's something that is in Brian Cain's book. It's something that's in Urban Meyer's book. And it's very important. And so when I'm in a workplace, even bartending, it's like I can go into a restaurant as a new bartender and I can understand, do people get the above the line, the below the line behavior? Is there specific things that are happening when people fall below the line? And so, yeah, I want you to touch on that real quick.
Yeah, for sure. And let's start with values and principles. They get confused a lot. They're often used interchangeably. And I like to simplify it. Core values are what's important to us around here, right? What we value. And core principles are how we behave around here, right? So values is what's important to us. Principles are about behaviors. And so when we talk about behaviors and we talk about principles, we all have a lot of context in our mind about what things mean. So part of, one of the things I learned from all of my mentors, whether it's George Mumford or Jason Selk or Brian Cain or Colin Henderson, is giving things definition. What does this mean to me? So when I talk about, let's say that family is one of your core principles for your organization. We're a family around here. Well, family means a bunch of different things to people. For some people, it's who they call when they go to jail. And for other people, it's why they don't go to jail, right? So family, we need to define what it means to be a family. or we need to define what it means to have integrity, or we need to define what it means to be competitive in our organization. So there's the definition. And then what are the behaviors for us that are important, that exemplify integrity or family or competitive? Showing up for practice 10 minutes early is an above the line behavior, right? Missing a workout is a below the line behavior. Above the line behavior is making my minimum sale call. Below the line behavior is not making my minimum number of sales calls. So you have this core principle that defines how we behave around here. You define what that means to the organization or the team. And then you look at the behaviors that support it or detract from it. And it makes it very easy, because the youngest guy on the team or the oldest guy on the team could look at somebody and just say, hey, that's not how we do things around here, because here's our description. They could say, hey, I'm being competitive, but they showed up late because they think I'm being competitive because I'm working hard in that set. But you showed up late. That's not how we do it around here. And the more you can do that and normalize it, then you've got this accountability thing, Todd, that comes from the organization, and everybody's now holding everybody accountable.
So I feel like you've probably been a part of helping someone develop that, right? And so what would have been some of the challenges with trying to go into an organization and say, okay, look, we don't really have specific values. And even if you do have values, potentially you don't even have a definition for them. So there are no above the line and below the line behaviors. So how can you talk a little bit about the process of you having to go through and doing that? Because I mean, that sounds like a serious challenge,
Yeah, it's a serious opportunity to bring clarity to an organization, and when you ask people what the mission is, and the CEO tells you, or the coach of the team tells you, and then you go into the locker room or to the boardroom or to the cubes and you ask people, and they don't know, they're words on a wall, right? So the first thing that you have to understand when you install, this is about culture, right? When you're installing culture and who we're going to become on the way to achieving this championship or this sales mission or this product launch that we have, you want to explain the importance of the only way to go there is if we have a culture that supports us. And so, I think Peter Drucker said culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's like we want to install the right culture, and culture is established. And this is one of the things that I'll talk about is every team organization has a culture. It's either intentional or unintentional. You just watch the way people behave. And so if you want more consistency in your results, then let's do an exercise where we can get everybody on the same page. It's collaborative. You want to bring in, a good cross section of the team. You don't want to, install, you want to influence and allow people to have buy-in to what we're going to do here. And then you want to make that a collaborative process, which is, what is it that we want? How are we going to get it? And then walk them through those steps. When you have a framework, we start big and we bring small. We say, look, let's get 10 core principles down. Okay, which 5 are the most important? Okay, which 3 are the most important? Because really, we want to get to simplify. We have too many things, too many goals, too many principles. It get confusing. So I'm a simplify guy. It's like, let's simplify this into the 3 things that are most important. If we do these right, the other things will happen. And then we just go through that exercise, define them, and let's come up with 1 or 2 above the line behaviors, 1 or 2 below the line behaviors. And now let's talk about a growth plan and how we can hold people accountable.
See, that seems so powerful.
If you can't do that from a talk, you got to get into a workshop. You got to get into a culture workshop, and you got to really get people committed to investing the time now to create the outcome later.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think that's something that really is missing right now. And I think that a lot of people just don't understand how to do it. First of all, not understanding how important it is. I see a lot of, it's just unfortunate to see a lot of like strict behavior, a lot of rules being put in place, to try to steer and guide people towards, the right thing to do without any sort of definition around what the right thing to do actually is. That's really hard for me to watch,
Yeah, it comes down to in the business world, when I work with organizations, I have a little saying around meetings. It's like, you don't have to meet so much if your leadership is clutch. It's like, we keep meeting because we're not leading. It's like, we need to meet because I need to know what they're doing. Well, if you taught them what to do, and there's a story, I think it was Bill Parcells, who was a college coach at the time, and he was he was a pretty intense guy anyways, but he was laying into these offensive linemen in practice, just tuning them up. And the coach came and called him over and said, look, we're not going to get anywhere with you animated like this all the time. These guys are they're just gonna back off. They're not gonna be able to follow through on what they're doing. He goes, but they don't get it. They don't understand. And the head coach at this college team said, then you need to teach them better. You need to coach them better. It's on you. And at the end of the day, if we're better leaders, if we're better teachers, leaders are teachers, and I say we need to teach and train, not tell. And that goes for position, that goes for sport, that goes for business.
So then with the attention crisis, if you will, that we're facing with especially younger kids, I know that you're doing some talks with younger athletes as well. How do we, and I know you talk a lot about the brain's bias, so we can talk about that for a minute, but how do we really kind of overcome that?
Well, we have to bring awareness to it first, right? So my belief is that awareness precedes choice, and then choice precedes change. So the first thing is, are we aware of what distraction is costing us, right? So at the end of the day, when I work with an executive and they talk about multitasking and people pulling them in different directions, the science is clear that distraction from a task is a 23 to 25 minute reset. So if you're doing something, anything, then you're going to, and you get distracted, it takes you approximately 23 minutes to refocus on that task in the same manner that you were focused on it before you get distracted. So let's talk about the cost of the distraction, and then I do a little exercise with the young kids, and I'll have 3 kids on stage. Maybe you've seen this on my Instagram, and I'll have one of them focused on the past, mistakes that they made, what didn't happen. I'll have one of them focused on the future, what they're worried about happening, what life they're going to get, where they're going to be in the future, and what other people are doing. And then I have one focused on me, and I throw 3 balls and ask them to play catch. And the only one who can play a simple game of catch is the person who's focused in the present moment. So if you can't even play catch with me when you're distracted, how are you going to be able to do the thing that you need to do in the present moment? And so having them understand that what they want comes with attention. And so the best way we can start is by starving our distractions, right? So the most important thing we can do once we create awareness around it is start to starve our distractions and make them difficult. Like when I'm on a call, I have to take my cell phone and move it out of eyesight. I have to put it in the glass jar at the front of my office so that I don't get distracted by it. Because when it's there, they've spent billions of dollars researching how to grab our attention away from what it is we need to be doing. So we need to, my kind of 2 simple concepts here today, Todd, would be bring awareness to what the distraction is costing us. And then 2, start by starving your distraction and feeding your focus.
Okay. And so starving the distraction is huge. I definitely do the same thing as well. I know for a fact that I am a human being. I know for a fact they spend millions of dollars studying me and trying to dupe me into wasting my time. And so I know that's very important. And so on the flip side then would be feeding your focus, like you said. And so I know that you and George Mumford, I've heard you talk about the myth around mindfulness or meditation. And so I'd love for you to share that with the audience, as well as how do we, I feel like that's, first of all, you can talk about any other exercises that you believe would help feed focus, but I think that meditation and mindfulness is probably going to be one of your top answers. So talk about the myth of meditation and any other exercises that will help feed focus.
Yeah, I was just on the phone with George last night. He's a close personal friend and really probably one of the biggest impetuses that have led me to this career path. And he's a special man. And when I met George, I was struggling with my meditation practice, and I said, it's just so hard for me to quiet my mind. And he just stopped me in my tracks, and he goes, well, that's not the objective of meditation. He said, the objective of meditation is to bring your attention back to what it is you were focused on when your mind drifts. All of our minds drift. It's like working a muscle. So for me, it became this awareness of breath and mindfulness, right? If you look at the definition from John Kabat-Zinn, who is George's mentor, it's paying attention in the present moment on purpose without judgment. So meditation is a practice that's designed to create present moment focus. And all you're doing is training your mind on a mantra, on a breath, on a verb, on a word, on a sound that you're focused on during that meditation. And when your mind drifts, you just bring it back to that breath, that mantra, that word, that sound. And you do this over a consistent period of time. And as soon as you become aware of your mind drifting, you bring it back to that mantra, that breath. And that's training your mind that when it wants, and it's in a game, During the day, our minds want to get distracted, right? It wants to avoid whatever it is that we're creating stress around in the present moment instead of actually finding relief in the present moment by focusing on it. So that the myth is, to me, that myth was meditation is about quieting my mind, and I can't quiet my mind, therefore I'm not meditating. Wrong. George's favorite line on meditation is I got my mind on my money and my money on my mind. I think that's a Dr. Dre song, but that's meditation. It's like whatever your mind is on, keep it on that. When it drifts, bring it back to the focus. So that's the myth, and it's a great practice. And I believe both those and concentration grids are another great tool to build present moment focus. We use that to, whether it's 10 by 10, 5 by 5, 8 by 8 grids, the number grids, to kind of reflect how much focus time you need. So if you're going from huddle to huddle in a football game, you do one level of grids. If you're a pitcher with the shot, with the clock now, pitch clock, you'd do a different grid to keep that focus in between pitches or in between innings. So concentration grids, mindfulness, and meditation, those are kind of the two fundamental skills that we should be teaching. And we should be teaching them as a practice to get better at. Most people avoid them because they think it's hard. They need to levitate or raise off the ground or have some kind of, aura around their head. It's not that. You just want to pay attention.
Yeah, no, see, that's huge. And I'm glad you mentioned concentration grids, because that's an interesting concept. I don't know if you watched the quarterback show. I'm into the NFL. It's probably one of the only sports I'm really into. But it's like this quarterback show, like these guys are having to remember complex chains of commands, while being exhausted. And so that's the practical application of it, is like it really does help in the real world. And so these concentration grids are like a 5 by 5 or a 10 by 10 by 10 of different numbers, all in a random order. And what you do is like you do some sort of exercise, and then you try to pick, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you start from a random number. You start from 81, go backwards. Those challenges are getting you to go from an exhausted state to really like looking at that concentration grid and focusing and getting that focus there in the exhausted state. And so I'm glad you brought that up. That's something that's huge that I don't think that a lot of people are applying in the real world. That's one of those exercises, a real practical exercise that people aren't doing. So that's really, really cool. Yeah, I definitely want to get back to the brain's bias, because that's huge for me, is for people to understand, one thing, the power of our own opinion about ourselves, and to the brain's bias towards negativity. And so I hear you talk about it almost every time you do a talk. So I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Well, yeah, it's a foundational principle, right? So I always say I'm a mental performance coach. And the first thing I got to do as a coach is I have to break down the competition, right? If we're in sales and we're going to launch a new product, we want to break down the competition. Who we up against, what's their pricing, what's their market share. If we're going up against a competitor in a sport, we're going to break down the competition and look at their film. So if you want optimal performance, the first thing I'm obligated to do is to break down the competition for you. And the competition for us is us versus us. It's our own mind. And our mind has been evolutionarily designed and evolved to help us survive, not to thrive. And so research has shown from the United States Psychological Association and others that our brain has a negativity bias. And when I speak, I ask people what they think that the number of average thoughts that we have, how many of them are negative in the course of a day. And, science says we have between 12 and 60,000 thoughts a day, and so how many of those thoughts lean negative? And I'll get lots of answers, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. But everybody almost to a person knows that it's a majority of their thoughts are negative. And it's about 80%, 78 to 80% is the number of our regular thoughts that are focused on fear, doubt, worry, and insecurity, right? So that's the first part, is that our brain's got a negativity bias designed to keep us safe and to help us survive, not to thrive. And in Marshall Goldsmith's book, he says, what got us here won't get us there. And I believe that's the same about our mind. The second thing, Todd, and I think the more damaging thing is the research that was done by Dr. Richard Hansen and the Wellspring Institute, where they found that our brain is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive experience, which means that negative experiences, your mistakes, failures, strikeouts, bad sales calls, all of these negative things that register into your long-term memory instantaneously and projects it into the next event, and dismisses positive experiences unimportant. We don't need to recall those. So our subconscious mind doesn't grab those like instantaneously. In fact, it dismisses them. So I always give people the image of your mind being like a museum, and there's this evil curator and he's hanging these pictures on your on your mind's wall of these mistakes and failures and worries and doubts. And then when you walk down, opportunity hallway, he takes those pictures and he throws them up to give you caution of actually taking and walking down opportunity hallway. Now, the good news is that we can reprogram that with what I call 15 seconds for success. 15 seconds for success is simply the idea that you can override your brain's Velcro response to negativity with positivity if you'll recall a positive event, a win, a success, an achievement for 15 seconds of conscious reflection. And so we've got 86,400 seconds in a day. And I just encourage everybody to take 15 seconds for success at the end of their day and wire in something great that happened.
Man, I love that. I got to go back to the fact that you said break down the competition. Like that to me, that's such an interesting concept. Like anytime you go towards establishing yourself in a new market, you're going to look at what's my competition. And generally you're saying the competition is yourself. Competition is yourself.
It's always you versus you. It's always you versus you.
That's crazy. So then I have to ask, I guess on a more personal level, how would you say you go? I mean, it's different for everybody. So sorry about this question, but how would you say you go about getting people to kind of be honest with that? Like how do you deliver the honesty in a kind way that get them to realize that they're their own problem, get them to realize that they're standing in their own way? I'm a very blunt person. And so for me, it's like, yeah, I want to be respectful. I want people to be understanding, but I also want people to believe that is the truth.
Yeah, it's like gravity. I mean, they can't see it, but if they step out the second floor window of their house, they're going to drop. And so these are principles and laws that are affecting everybody's life, and they know it intuitively. They know intuitively that they've got they feel negative or they worry a lot. You'll hear people say, "I'm stressed, I'm worried a lot," and then you ask what you're doing about it. And I think we need more skills, less pills. I'm a believer that when we look at the skills that we can develop for mental performance, that we can overcome a lot of these things. But I don't deny anybody's right to be average. I don't deny anybody's right to be sub-average. If that's their choice and they don't want to do something different, then they'll get the results that they're getting. And average process leads to average results. And listening to your brain's negativity bias is causing you to not write that book, not launch that course, not leave that job, not go for that promotion. And if you're comfortable with knowing you want more, but not doing more, and the anxiety and stress that creates, then you're not going to do these things. And that's why, on the back of every card I send, and you probably have the one from when I sent you the pen, it says one quote, which is what you want for your life consistent with what you do in your life. The answer for me for a period of time in my life was no. What I wanted for my life was very inconsistent with what I was doing in my life. And when I got that formula more intentional, I created more intentional results.
Yeah. So, I mean, why don't we go back there real quick then and share whatever you're willing to share with how that kind of process of you switching into being a mental performance coach and getting into all this stuff, maybe, possibly coming to a head with, the addictions in the past. I would love to hear about how you were able to kind of overcome that place of being stuck or being not happy with what you're doing in life.
Yeah, for sure. So, what I think people need to understand, Todd, is what you don't deal with will deal with you, right? So my darkest moments came from avoidance of reality. So I grew up in a violent home for 19 years. I was physically and violently abused at the hands of a very sociopathic father. And so at the age of 19, I had a 45 caliber pistol that was leveled at my temple. Fortunately, I had a brother who was home from the service and was able to knock my dad down. And I left home at 19 with, student loans and credit card debt. And I wanted to deny that part of my life. And so, I started drinking at the age of 12. I also started working hard and doing well in school so I could get myself out of that situation. And what that led to was a lot of pursuing material wealth at the expense of my self-worth. And so I was masking these undealt with feelings with drugs and alcohol. And it went from, an occasional to a dependency to an addiction over a very, short period of time. And so, when I was at the darkest moment, my life was kind of closing in around me, I had to make a decision. So I found recovery for my drug and alcohol problem. And February of this year, I celebrated 16 years of continuous sobriety. And so while proud of that, there's a process for that. I needed a solution to my mental conditioning. My mind was very conditioned by the influence of these negative experiences, which is what I determined was me giving the pen of the story of my life away. And so, I'll never forget the day I heard Trevor Moawad, who, fast forward, I now work for the company he founded. But I first heard him speak online, and he said, "Your past isn't predictive of your future. Your current behaviors are." And I was like, wow, that really struck me. Like I can really start to make a change. And instead of listening to the influence of other people, which has only 1/10 the power of the influence that I have over me, right? But if I'm listening to them, then it's the most powerful message that there is. So I had to take this pen back, and I had to create my own narrative, my own internal ad campaign, my own character definition of who Charlie Smith was. And I had to start to rewrite that story a page, a paragraph, a chapter at a time, matching new intentions with new intentional behavior. And so that's where my entry into mental performance came, and seeing the struggle that people are having in optimizing their performance. It was just kind of a natural progression for me as somebody who wants to be of service, which is to give away what I've learned, is to help people in their own lives see a pathway out of whatever darkness they're in. They might not have the same past that I have, but all of us have these narratives that we're holding onto, these stories that we're telling ourselves. And when we change that story, we change our lives.
Man, that's powerful. And congratulations for 16 years.
Thank you, brother.
That's amazing. And you're working for Trevor Moawad's company now? I got to know about this.
Oh yeah, so I auditioned for him was picked up as a room tilter for Limitless Minds last year. So I've started to work with the team at Limitless Minds on corporate mental performance training, and so I'm doing some work with them this year.
Dang, that is awesome. So yeah, I have to share my story real quick. So first of all, for anybody who doesn't know, Trevor Moawad was Russell Wilson's coach. Many more athletes on top of that. Worked at like IMG Academy, worked for all these professionals. Amazing. His dad was a amazing professional speaker and motivational speaker and corporate trainer, all the things that Charlie's doing right now. And so we both got into the field of mental performance coaching through this guy, Trevor Moawad. And so he has a book called It Takes What It Takes. He has another one called Neutral Thinking. Great philosophies. And so it's pretty funny that, Charlie's able to be working for his company now. So when I first started looking up jobs online, trying to find anything I could find, internships, anything, I found a ad for Trevor Moawad's company out of Scottsdale, and I live here in Phoenix. And so I was like really close. I'm like, cool, like I'm going to check this out, click on the ad. I'm hoping that it's just like a entry-level internship, or there's something I got to do or write something. And I'm pretty good at writing, I feel like. So I was like, I'll be able to nail this down. And I look at the ad and it says bachelor's degree required. And I didn't have mine yet. And I was like, oh my God, come on. And so I actually almost 4 years now, decided to go back to school to try to get an internship with Trevor Moawad. That was kind of the main goal in my mind. I didn't know what else I was going to do with it. I was like, okay, I'm going to work with Trevor Moawad. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to have all eyes set on working for Trevor Moawad. And then Trevor Moawad passed away. And that's incredibly sad. We all saw the wake of Russell Wilson's performance after that happened. I feel bad for that guy having to go through it, getting traded to a different team, as well as his mental performance coach passing away. So yeah, that's huge, and it's unfortunate that that's how it's gone down. But now I'm trying to figure out a different way to shift and keep going with the work that Trevor Moawad was doing. And so I love that you're doing that. I can't believe that you're working for Limitless Minds now. That's really cool. What else would you say that you see yourself kind of heading into with this coaching, maybe now or in the future? I'm sure you have some sort of bigger goals around where you'd like to take your business, the business, whatever.
Yeah, for me, it's again, this path is kind of unfolding for me. I started casting a wide net and now figuring out where I can most serve and at the high performance level. For me, I think that the need in the high performing world for me, being a performance consultant in the commercial real estate world is lending itself very naturally to where I can help. You're most qualified to help the person you used to be. So having experience in that area has been really rewarding for me. And then obviously the elite professional athletes and look, for me, even the high school athletes that I get to work with, that want more for their lives. It's a whole person career. I'd say kind of if I were to look telescope wise, I want to, publish the My Life, My Pen book. I want to be able to have that platform available for people to go through an online course to take the pen to the story of their lives. I want to empower and inspire everyone to own the pen. So launching that as a international program for people to be able to consume that content and to be able to access that teaching is really important to me. So I'm working on that now. And then just continuing to refine my mental performance training and speak more.
Man, I love that. And I got to share a story about you. So I have started this podcast primarily on the back of reaching out to mental performance coaches and just inquiring, just being like, hey, how'd you get to where you got to? And a lot of people have been willing to talk to me. Obviously some people don't respond at all, and some people are too busy, and some people send back a quick little message just like, oh, here, take my course, $997. And it is what it is. They've earned that right to pitch that. That's fine. But Charlie took it to a different level. Charlie actually asked for my address, sent me a pen, my story, sent me a book and like a little card. It's like, know who you are, know where you're going. And it's just like, that was so powerful to me. It's like, that is a different type of person. I have a huge respect for Charlie Smith and what he's doing out there. Like that, that was such a sentimental thing that you just don't see that in the world. So tell me how you started doing that.
Well, I mean, for me, it's human connection is one of the most important things in my life, and I think that we're all here as human beings to be connected. And so my primary foundational premise is, how can I be of service to other people that are trying to embark on their own lives? And, there's nothing more powerful than giving people the pen to the story of their life. And so I've trademarked it. I've ordered hundreds of them. And if you know me and you inquire about what I'm doing, the first thing I'm going to ask is for your address, and I'm going to send you a pen, because if you're going to connect with me, then you're going to be the owner of your pen. And it's just always been part of my kind of DNA, was to connect with people and to develop relationships. I think there was a time in my life, Todd, where relationships were very transactional for me. And today, my life is very relational. My friends are about relationships and how I can support them. And, all of us together are stronger than one of us alone. And that's my mantra. So it's just a little thing I decided to do. I had my little cards made, that when you write the story of your life, it's got the 5 pillars on the back. You get a pen, you get a card, and it's just my way of letting people know that they mean something to me.
See, that's such a, it just meant a lot. It meant a lot to me. So that was really cool. And the time that you've been willing to share has been awesome. We actually met because we were both doing the Mental Performance Mastery Certification by Brian Kane. And so, we both know what pillars are in there. We both know that they are very valuable. I'm curious if anything comes to mind that you've learned in the field that you necessarily wouldn't have learned if you did the course. Being in my shoes, having not been in the field, what is something that you've kind of come across? It's like, oh, that's interesting. That's different. I wouldn't have expected to have to know this or to deal with this.
I think for me, one of the things that, and I think it's what drew me to Brian's curriculum, was that was just the skills he wanted to teach. And it's very open to incorporating it into your own framework or personalizing it yourself. And so he's got the 10 pillars, which, I've taken and incorporated into my 8 elements that support my 5 pillars. And I think one of the things that I've learned is this idea of unshakable self-confidence, or anti-fragile confidence, or how to help people develop confidence and understand confidence. And so for me, that's been what I've delved into most. I've kind of taken a bunch of concepts around intentional practice, and I kind of call confidence training is about your 2 B's, your blood, sweat, and tears, and your body language, focus, and self-talk, because the confidence formula is really belief times evidence, right? So this idea that confidence is something that we do, and it's the last thing that we got. The feeling of confidence comes last. The actions of confidence come first. And so I have a little bit of a confidence kind of staircase that I created, and taking some of the things from all of the disciplines that I've learned to create a course around developing unshakable self-confidence and helping people understand the feelings of confidence, follow the actions of confidence, has been really great for me. It's one of my lead workshops.
So how would you say that someone can maintain confidence when the evidence that they see is failure, or they've just come off the back of a poor performance? How does someone maintain confidence in that state?
Well, first you have to understand what confidence is, right? Confidence comes from the Latin word confidere. Confidere means intense trust. So what is self-confidence? It's intense trust of yourself. Now, intense trust of yourself for what? I say it's intense trust of yourself to try, intense trust of yourself to fail, intense trust of yourself to learn and grow, and intense trust of yourself to try again. So the way you keep your confidence up in the face of failures, you learn from that lesson, you reflect and progress. That success cycle is prepare, perform, reflect, and progress. And so if you're not reflecting and progressing, then you're stuck in the mistake. But if you can move on from the mistake in a productive way, then you're going to progress. So you have to use failure as feedback. And if you use failure as feedback, then your confidence stays high because you're asking yourself out of that setback, what did I learn? How did I grow? What am I going to do different? I just got better.
See, and that's along the same lines of like writing your own story. And so that's why I love that that's a central component of your teachings. So I took a course called NLP. I don't know if you know what NLP is
Yeah.
already. Yeah, neuro linguistic programming.
Heuristic.
And so one of the things they have you do is to imagine these scenes that happened at some point in your life. To try to like literally imagine a timeline and go down into it and imagine you reevaluating some situation that happened to your life. And so to me, I immediately thought about that when you're like, oh, my pen, my story. I'm like, well, yeah, that's like, so that's something that's very applicable for now, writing my story right now, writing my story in the future and how I would like it to be, but also going back in the past and realizing maybe potentially it's not in pen, maybe it's in pencil in the past, and you can kind of like erase it. For me, it's like the past is in pencil, and you can go back in the past, or you can use whiteout, however you want to think about it, and you can kind of reevaluate things that have happened, even a past failure. And so I think that's kind of what I hear, is that ability to reframe being so powerful. And so along with like a reframe, rewriting the story, how do you feel about affirmations and mantras?
I think they're really important. And just, to dive into your point, right? So I had a past. I had a story about my past. My story was I'm a victim of domestic violence and violent child abuse. And if that happened to me, the way I was treated by the person who was put on earth to save me and keep me safe was doing this to me, that there must be something wrong with me. And so I had this damaged personal truth I grew up with. Right. And for many years, I was kind of an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. I was trying to mask that insecurity with external things. And so that past remains factually the same. My story about it has totally changed. I'm a survivor. I look at that kid now and I go, man, you had nothing going for you and you got yourself out of that. Resourceful, determined, brave, courageous. These are the terms I use to describe that young man now. Whereas before it was loser, weak, and lots of other unhealthy things. So the same past is about the story I tell myself about the past. And when I tell myself a better story, the right story, one that serves me more, I take those things and I say, well, yeah, and now I'll be courageous, I'll be determined, I'll be brave, and I'll be disciplined about what I want to do next because that's who I am. And, every morning I wake up, I sit down and I write down the reason why I got up this morning. And my burn is that little kid. If he went through what he went through and got out, I owe it to him to impact this world in the best way possible. And so I have to affirm that to myself, right? I mean, if I'm going to listen to who I am, I better have, I call it a Madison Avenue internal ad campaign about who I am. I think affirmations are or what I call them confidence conditioning statements they're steeped in real truth, and they reflect reality. So I won't say things like, I won't say I'm the fastest man on the world, but I will say I'm a world-class mental performance consultant and a highly sought-after keynote speaker. Now, am I a highly sought-after keynote speaker today? Not like some others, but that's a vision of who I think I can be, that I can believe in. And I write that, and then I'm speaking. I'm like, oh, and I see a speaking agreement come through my email. It's confirming what I believe I am. So I think if we don't tell ourselves who we are, we make ourselves susceptible to what other people think we are. And what other people think of you is none of your business unless you think it about you.
Yeah.
So, let's get clear on that.
And I think that, to be clear too, I feel like sometimes it's not that we can't do it for ourselves, but I think that it's very valuable to have people in our environment that know how to do that. And so for me, I'm still bartending. I found myself working with like 21-year-olds, 16-year-olds, whatever, every range. And so those people don't necessarily know how to do that. So they'll be telling me a story in victim mode, and I'll be like, oh, you sound like you were incredibly resourceful. Sounds like this. It sounds like all the things that you were saying. So they're telling me a story about how, oh man, this was so hard. This was that. And this is the worst day ever. And I'm just like, oh, sounds like you learned a great lesson. Sounds like, you gained some new skills. And they're like, wait, what? And like that literally throws people for a loop. And I just think it's so cool to have that understanding that we can do that for people as well as for ourselves. And so I think that that is something that I would see being valuable going into a workplace, going into the leadership, and making sure that they know how to do that for the people around them. And so I feel like that's got to be part of what you teach for these leadership seminars, workshops, and things like that.
Yeah, So there's a bunch of, there's like 5 primary objectives of leadership, and last on the list is getting results. But first on the list is growing and developing your team. And so servant leadership is this idea that people don't care what you know until they know you care. And so the first thing that we've got to do as leaders is we've got to really instill a belief in the people that work for us. And that's why growing them into independent initiators, as I call them, where they feel comfortable making a mistake and learning and growing from it, and the psychological safety in the team is there to instill that is how they're going to increase and perform better. And so, yeah, we've got to grow and develop our team. We have to understand and provide strategies and systems for them that are proven processes for success, and we've got to set their strategies and priorities. But really, what we're trying to do is, as leaders, is build other leaders, independent initiators.
See, and that's what's so cool. And so that's what's the kind of topic around this podcast is too, is just for people to see the connections between sports, spirituality, and success, and how all those principles are the exact same principles that you're teaching, whether it is in your own personal life, in your own spiritual experience, whether it is to an athlete that needs to focus more on the process, or whether it is to a corporate executive who really needs to value his people. I think that it's so cool to know that they're so applicable across these different fields. And so that's what's so cool. So you were working with real estate investors, you said, as well as working with peak performance athletes. And so it's like, what are the common things that they're both coming to you with?
High performers, they want to improve their confidence. They want to improve their consistency. They want to be able to tolerate adversity. They want to be able to bounce back from setbacks quickly. I mean, life is not about avoiding difficulties. It's about knowing you have everything that you need inside of you to make it through difficulties, and through getting through difficulties, challenges, setbacks, that you're getting stronger. Resilience is a muscle. The more pressure, the more strength. The more you break down a muscle in the gym, the stronger it gets. No pressure, no diamonds, they'll say. Or as George Mumford says, no struggle, no swag. Probably my favorite Mumfordism is no struggle, no swag. You have to go through to get up. We elevate through adversity. That's my firm belief, my underlying principle, and my life experience, that I have elevated through adversity. And again, the adversity, divorce. My sister took her own life 6 years ago. Alcoholism, addiction, a violent father. It's always been me versus me. It's always been me versus me. And for a lot of years, the worst of me was winning until I took this pen back.
Man, wow. Yeah, see, and I think that struggle is part of what I was saying, that we're dealing with this attention problem, right? And so I think that a lot of people are avoiding the struggle and going towards rewards. And I love the way that you talk about dopamine and addiction and the reward system, and how that becomes like a very slippery slope. And so would you share some of that with us?
Yeah, for sure. So and thank you for the questions, man. They're awesome. I really appreciate you. So dopamine is our internal reward system, and what dopamine actually does is it supports the attachment to things that we do that give us pleasure. And we have a natural dopamine receptor in our body that creates a natural level of dopamine. When we replace that with artificial dopamine hits, like our phones, like alcohol, like drugs, we get this big rush of dopamine. Gambling, I think, is 3 times the dopamine hit of even alcohol or drugs. And it's the pursuit of these things. I'm really concerned about our youth and gambling and access to gambling. I mean, it's just a highly addictive and very, very detrimental addiction to have. So when we get artificial dopamine driving our system from rewards that are unhealthy, drugs, alcohol, porn, gambling, shopping, things that we're doing to distract ourselves from feeling whatever we're supposed to be feeling, we get these huge lifts in dopamine from these things, Todd. And then what happens is our body says, well, that's too much dopamine. So I'm going to reduce my production of dopamine because you're getting this huge spike in dopamine from these things. And so when you don't have those things, we feel this kind of lethargy. We feel this kind of lack of motivation until we engage in that thing again or start to pursue that thing again. And then to get that dopamine hit. So, natural dopamine is what we want to create. We create that through getting those rewards from healthy things and keeping those natural dopamine levels high. When we smoke marijuana and do things that artificially give us these dopamine hits, we're hijacking our reward system and we're replacing it with unhealthy hits of dopamine. Then we pursue those because that's what our body's used to getting our dopamine, which is the reward system that we have for doing more of it. So it's very slippery slope, as you said, and it's really detrimental to human performance.
And so do you have some basics? I know you said starving your distractions earlier. That clearly ties right into that. But do you have any other tips that you share with people on kind of like getting a hold of that? Like if it's a takeoff train, runaway train, if you will, like how do we kind of begin on a, because again, people are avoiding struggle, so they're not going to go straight to the dopamine detox. What are the first steps they're going to kind of take to get that under control?
So we have to start with identity first. So people will not outperform their identity. So what we believe about ourselves and our subconscious mind is what makes us act like us. So we have to first shape and mold our identity about the kind of person we want to be. Then we need to create intentional affirmations around that person and have some affirmations around who we want to be. Then we have to take action and then create accountability. So the easiest way to do it is to start small. Make the start very simple. So what's one thing that you can do today to improve this situation? I'll say for me, I think Brian and Colin Henderson would say sweat before screens, right? Get some physical work in before you hop on the device. I say no gadgets before God. My prayer meditation in the morning comes before I'll pick up any device. Create some separation. So if you can have a digital sunset where you're off your device at a certain amount of time at night, maybe a half hour before you go to bed, and you can starve yourself in the morning before you get back on it, you're creating some separation. Make the start very simple. Go for a 15-minute walk. You don't need to go do 45 minutes of hard lifting. Get to the gym for 15 minutes and do 10 push-ups in the morning. Like, start to do the healthy things that you need to do on a small scale so you can build big habits.
Yeah, that's got to be huge. I mean, I just don't think people understand the power of dopamine and so that combined with the power of values and how powerful that is to determining how we use our time. And I think that time is the most important thing. So I think a lot of people are really, really doing themselves a disservice by continuing to just be distracted and stay distracted. And I find myself doing it at times too, where I have to really be intentional with what it is that I want to be spending my time in. And so I think a lot of people are struggling with that. I think there's a lot of people that are very driven and know what they want to do, but there's a whole other crowd of people that have no idea who they are. And so when I hear you say like starting with knowing who you are, I think that can be a very challenging thing for some people because it's like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't feel capable of doing much. I don't know who I am. I don't know who I want to be. I just want to feel better, And so I don't know if that's necessarily my target audience, but I do work with some of these people. I do experience this where they're great people. They just don't know what they don't know. They don't know that they can be something great. And so I'm sure you come across these people too. Any things to say to these people?
Well, there's nothing to say. There's questions to ask, right? And so at the end of the day, when you ask the right questions, you can pull things out of people that they're not thinking about. So the first question that I'll ask somebody is, what do you want? What do you want? Why don't you have it? What do you need to do to start getting it? And let's just start there. Because that idea of who am I, we're a lot of things. I'll start with this idea of a me wheel, which is just getting people to see the roles they play in life and looking at you're more than one thing. You're not just your job. You're a father, you're a son, you're a brother, you're a sister, you're a friend, you're a writer, you're a painter. You have so many. I think we get so narrow in our focus of labels and labels limit. So let's start first broadening all these roles that you play in life. And then let's start building this kind of truth triangle around yourself. And so I'll have people look at their strengths. What are their skills, the knowledge they have, the abilities they have? Let's start building this truth triangle. And out of that shapes and forms this image. And they go, you know what? This is really who I am. This is really what I want and what I want to do. I think labels limit, and people will sit and they'll play it safe. They'll play it small, right? Because uncertainty loves an action. So if I'm fear of failure and I don't do anything, I can't fail. And that's playing small. And the world doesn't want anybody playing small, man.
I 100% agree. And that's what I exactly find myself doing. I love that you said that, because to me, it's like, well, what are you passionate about? What are you good at? What do you like to do? What do you want out of life? And it always ends up coming back to this place of like, there is a desire there where it seemed to be almost no desire, and they're pushing away those feelings. And so that leads me into another, potentially we'll wrap it up here soon. But I definitely want to know, people are avoiding their feelings. And so there's this whole movement around whether feelings are important and we should listen to our feelings, or whether, F the feelings and just do whatever we need to do in the moment. Right. And so I've heard you talk about feelings as traffic signals. And so will you share that with us?
Yeah. I mean, what I've learned is to, again, what you don't deal with will deal with you. Sad, happy, passionate, worry, doubt, fear, excitement, whatever I'm feeling, right? I need to acknowledge that, but not attach to it, right? So I have to move through feelings. They're like waves in the ocean. If I deny my feelings, if I'm sad because my sister took her life and I don't acknowledge that, and I don't feel that, and I don't feel the loss, and I don't support my nieces, and I don't go through all that grief cycle, and I avoid that, then I'm not going to heal from it, right? So the pain is the impetus for healing. So I have to feel those feelings. But what I can't do is have those feelings dictate my actions. I can't, because my sister's not here anymore, I can't start eating pizza for 3 meals a day. I can't start drinking a cold beer at the end of the day to get a little separation from her being gone. And I can't lay on my couch and watch Netflix. I mean, I can do all those things, but that's not a healthy way to deal with uncomfortable feelings. So my belief is feelings are like signal lights. They're telling me something needs attention. And then I go to my protocols, my system, my framework of my values and my principles of how I behave. So if I prioritize my physical health and I work out 6 days a week, I don't use that sadness as an excuse to avoid what I need to do. I may not go as hard, but I'm going to get outside and take a walk. I know I need to get some fresh air, right? So it's the idea of moving through the feelings, knowing that feelings aren't facts, and not attaching to them or letting them take us out of our highest level of achievement in our protocols. Feelings mess with everybody. I mean, we're human beings, right? Not human doing. So the feelings we're supposed to feel, but we don't want those feelings to take on a meaning that disparages us from pursuing our goals and doing what we said we would do.
Yeah, that's a challenging one. Because I mean, yeah, the impetus is to, my feelings are too intense, and so I'm going to lay around on the couch and I'm going to do nothing until I quote unquote feel better. And so what if someone knows the right thing to do, but they don't, feel like doing it? I think that's a challenge, right?
It is, and that's, I think, again, awareness precedes change, and it's like, oh, I have these things that make me feel better, that are healthy for me. And I have to, again, if I get my above the line and below the line behaviors down, we have to go through the feelings and we have to feel the feelings, but we can't allow those feelings to move us away from healthy things. So I think there's a lot of healthy things we can do to deal with uncomfortable feelings. And if you can identify with those things and start to do those things, you'll actually feel better faster.
Yeah, see, that's something I had to learn the hard way, because I dealt with my own rough childhood, foster care, and my foster brother
Right.
actually overdosed as well. Right after I did my NLP course, which one of the reasons I wanted to do that was to potentially help him, because he was dealing with a lot of addictions and in and out of jail, and so that was my own sad story there.
Well, remember that the last pillar of the pen I think will tie into this, because the last pillar is know who you go with, right? So what community and connection, that idea that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, who's in your 5, your vibe attracts your tribe, and making sure that when you're going through things that you don't go through them alone. We're designed to be able to support each other and to help each other through these things, and to have people to, there's that old adage, right? Fall down 7, get up 8. Well, sometimes that 8th time can be very hard. And so asking somebody, hey, you know what? I'm down for the count right now. Could you help me up? I've been on the couch for an afternoon. I'm not feeling good. I know I need to do something. Can you come over and can we go for a walk? I mean, having people in your community, in your 5, and that's why that 5th pillar of creating community and connection with people that share values, share principles, that can be open, honest, and confrontational in a supportive way. Like, hey, I know this isn't good for you, right? I'll never forget when one of my closest friends said, hey, you're taking way too many of those pain pills, man. I'm really worried about you, and he had the courage to say that despite my defensiveness back. It planted a seed that if he cares this much, maybe I got to look at it. And sometimes we want to put those people around us that aren't afraid to help us through difficult times. So a kind of a great segue into that 5th pillar of the pen. And I think the missing piece in that motivation is no one should win or worry alone in this world, right? We need to be able to help each other and support each other through the victories and pick each other up when we're vulnerable.
I absolutely love that concept of I'm not sure the exact terminology used, but some sort of positive confrontation, being able to confront people in a way that is respectful and in their best interest. And so I think that's one of the things that I see both in the sports world as well as in the business world, is that people believe that they just don't say anything at all because they don't want to have to say anything. They feel like they have to confront them in a way that is like reprimanding or discipline. And so I think that that's something you're probably teaching people, is to make sure that you are able to confront people in a way that is respectful of the person themselves, right?
Absolutely. It's called Difficult Conversations. There's books written on it, Critical Conversations. What is your intent? What is your motive? Say what you mean. Don't say it mean. I'm here to be helpful. But you either plant a seed of hope or you deny somebody a seed of possibilities. And so if you're aware of something and you do this with the motivation of not criticizing, but of changing, it's a different story. I think so many times people envision difficult conversations like I'm punishing somebody or I'm being critical of them. Yeah. And all I'm doing is I'm holding them accountable for who they've told me that they said they want to be, and holding up a mirror and asking them, is this what you meant by that?
Yeah, see, I love that. I love acting as the mirror for people and just being there in their environment, supporting them. Hey man, you said you wanted to do this. I'm just looking out for you. So I want to wrap it up here. I know you love to read. I love to read. You brought up a couple books during this podcast. So I want, looking for, if someone's interested in getting into mental performance, understands that, yes, there's nothing wrong with them, but they want to optimize. So what is your top 1 or 2 things to get started for a beginner, doesn't even know what mental performance is until today? And what is a book or 2 that you really enjoy, that you like?
Well, I mean, for me in the mental performance world, it's George Mumford and Brian Cain are the kind of 2, and I'll throw my man Colin Henderson in there. I mean, I've just got a lot of great mentors in that space. The Mindful Athlete by George Mumford is a foundational book. It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moawad. Consuming Brian Cain's content is whether it's Mental Performance Daily or his long form podcast. He's just got a lot of great, and his mission is to certify mental performance coaches and teach people these skills, and as he does himself. So both of those books, It Takes What It Takes, The Mindful Athlete, are really, really good. And following any of those guys would be really helpful for people.
Okay. And then what is, you have your 5-step process, so they don't necessarily go in any specific order. I feel like I would have a inclination to pick one as the number 1, but I want to let you pick, as far as like, if I'm going to get started on this, kind of where should I start?
For me, it's the number 1 pillar, which is know who you are. I mean, you've got to get clear on who you are, because like the oxygen mask on an airplane when you're flying, right? They say put the mask on yourself first before you can help anybody else. So you can't transmit something that you haven't got. There was a time in my life I was 240 pounds and had a 40-inch waist, and to be talking about performance and not having living performance would have been very challenging. So you can't transmit something you haven't got. So know who you are and develop the confidence, the self-awareness, the internal ad campaign, your own leadership and framework philosophy, and really know what it is that you would teach yourself as you were kind of coming up and going through this stuff. What is it that you would want to learn? And then the last part will just be learn how to teach. Really, like, understanding that we're not sages on the stage. We're here to make, as Justin Su'a says, we're here to impact people. And this whole journey is about other people, not about us. And so kind of turning that spotlight onto them and being of service is really important. And then get after it. I'm a quick start guy. Fire, aim. Just, don't wait. Start teaching this stuff. Do it for free. Go to high schools. Get out in the world and share your message. And you don't have to land on top of the mountain by a helicopter. You got to start climbing.
I love that. And I want to reiterate on your point, because I heard it differently in my NLP course, which was the concept of you can only take people as deep as you're willing to go. And so I think that, coming from full on addiction all the way to being a peak performer, doing over $1 billion in real estate deals, you've kind of been everywhere. And so I think it's awesome that you're able to do this. I have a huge respect for you, and I definitely super grateful that you were willing to come on. I know that your time is very valuable to the athletes and to the investors and business people that you work with, the speeches that you do. I'm grateful to have a relationship with you. So thank you again for joining us. Any final notes? Where can they find you? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram as my primary, LinkedIn and Instagram are my two primary vehicles. I also have a Facebook page. It's at Charlie Smith Speaks. CharlieSmithSpeaks.com is my website. And my email address is charlie@charliesmithspeaks. And let's put it out to your audience and viewers. If you email me your address, I will send you your pen. And really, when you write the story of your life, don't let anyone else hold the pen. That I think is the most important finish I can give you.
Okay, no, that's awesome. And yeah, make sure you heard that. If you send in your address to Charlie Smith, he will send you a package. And I promise you, I felt a little bit sketched about it when he first asked for my address. This is the most upstanding guy you're gonna find. He's gonna send you the pen. You're gonna be happy. It literally, it's right. If I was in my reach, I'd grab it right now, but it's right on my windowsill, and I look at it all the time. Like it is really powerful. It is a good message. And I love what Charlie's doing, and I love the idea of taking back the pen of your life. So thank you again, Charlie, for being on the podcast. And we'll definitely be in touch again soon.
Keep on keeping on, okay, my man. You got a gift the world needs, for sure.
Thank you, Charlie. You as well. And we'll talk soon.
Take care.
All right, see ya.